Good afternoon, everybody. You forgot to give it, eh? Fishing. I love fishing. I never do it. Somebody said, but you must have been fishing because you've got Violi. No, I wasn't fishing, she was fishing. And the rest is history. I'd love that sign, Gone Fishing. We should get a sign like that and be very active in fishing for people. I like this t-shirt. The fishing is always good with Jesus. A known story, a very well-known story, but let's look at it again. See if we really know it very well. The Sea of Galilee is a beautiful lake. It's quite magnificent. Gets very wild when the hot air from the mountains gets here on that water here. You can get some very violent storms. It is round the Sea of Galilee, and I'll just put up the little map again. Here you are. Here you have Jerusalem. This is Judea down here. We're now up north. That is of course Galilee, and Galilee is a mixture of Jews and non-Jews and all sorts of people, particularly a lot of Greek descendancy as well. And then the lake that it is all around is right down there. All those names that you look at are very familiar to you. Capernaum is really the unofficial headquarters of Jesus. Now, we are picking up the story and we are about halfway through the mission of Jesus. It is halfway through his ministry. He's been here in Jerusalem, he's been in Judea, and things did not go very well. A lot of opposition. Another thing that had happened, of course, was the arrest of John the Baptist. And he was languishing in jail here. And it was very much on the mind of the disciples. There's something that we should realize. Jesus had selected fishermen. Now, of all the people that you possibly could get, why would you get fishermen? Fishermen were simple people. They were uneducated people. And you could close your eyes and you could tell they were there. Why? Yeah, of course. But he got fishermen. There was one exception. There was one accountant. Of course, that was Judas. But all the others he picked, and there was a tax collector as well, Matthew. But here we have basically the core of the group of disciples were fishermen. I want you to have a look at the right side. God sees in you what you can't see in yourself. Do you know that is still very much true today? And it applies to everyone. Have a look at the top. Sometimes you see failure, but God sees victory in you. You know, sometimes you look in the mirror. Never sideways, always like this. And you look in the mirror and then you try to assess your life. Well, you're not as good looking anymore. I mean, I am, but I'm just saying. So you have an assessment and you think, well, what did I do? And you'll be amazed what Jesus can see in you, what you just don't see. I want you to be encouraged by that. He picked fishermen because he could see what he could make out of them. I like the statement below, Psalm 139. Oh Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. It's true. More than you even know about yourself. For God knew his people in advance and he chose them to become like his son. That's what it's all about. God can see the Son in you. It's marvelous, really. But then God looks at us with the eyes of love. You understand that, don't you? God sees in you what you cannot see in yourself. Let's pick up the story. He's standing there at that little beach there at the Sea of Galilee. We're not too sure about the exact location. The beach is not very big. And he's being crowded out, and then he starts talking. And when Jesus speaks, they listen. The words that came from his mouth, the things that he said, were so different from what they normally used to hear. Totally, totally different. So it was as the multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God that he stood by the lake of Gennesaret. And then he saw two boats standing. That's what the Bible said. Two boats standing by the lake, but the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets. Now let me paint the picture. It is early in the morning, and you would have and should have seen the light. If ever you've been to that lake, the early morning light is absolutely brilliant. I used to love the look of that. And so you have the glistening there of that lake, and you have the people that are all coming. They're coming very early. He was still very popular at this stage in Galilee, and they're all surrounding him. In fact, he's going to be crowded out. He gets into one of the boats, and the fishermen, they are attending to the net. They are cleaning their nets, and they are mending the nets because they get damaged. It's a very laborious, boring job to do that. Not many of you would have ever done that, I'm sure. And so they're washing the nets, and then what he does, he got into one of the boats, which was Simon, that was Peter, and he asked him to put a little bit from the land. In other words, so he gets a bit away from his immediate audience, and acoustically, he can cover the whole beach. And he continues to speak. And it must have been wonderful. Sometimes when I read the Bible, I know reading the Bible is good and it's wonderful. I'll give anything to hear his voice audibly. It must have been something. But anyway. And so he sat down and he taught the multitudes. And then somewhere round about mid-morning, or past mid-morning, towards midday, this is now full light, towards midday, he stopped. And then he said to Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. Now, how much have they caught thus far? No good. You still have to clean your nets. You still have to mend your nets. And by the way, you could only fish at nighttime. The water was so clear, the fish would not go to your net. They could see it coming, you understand? You had to fish by night. The other thing you should do, you should fish close to the shore, because that's where they are. What is Jesus asking? Anybody who knows anything about fishing would never try it there and this time of the day. Anybody who knew anything about, well, maybe a carpenter would. Yeah, maybe a carpenter. Now that's interesting. He asked them to do something that goes against their better knowing. Now there's a lesson here. There's an enormous lesson here. Peter. Jesus called for Simon to launch out into the deep. It's interesting. Jesus is about to take Simon to a deeper personal commitment. You have to live and experience deeper. That's about where he's going. Now, he doesn't see it that way. All he does, he hears this request from his beloved master to launch out, wrong time of the day, in the deep, the wrong place. Simon answered and said to him, Master, we have toiled all night and caught nothing. What is he saying to Jesus? Now, Lord, You're good in preaching. I'm the fisherman. You can hear him say it. Now, he's very tactful. What he's saying to Jesus, they ain't working for us tonight. We have toiled. They haven't been playing cards. They have worked all night and caught nothing. Nothing. In other words, it is not working. Now, however, that's his master. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. This is a very important statement. He is willing to do it. He's willing to do it, and he does do it. But you know what I like about it? He straight away says so. To him, he's done this all night. He spent hours cleaning the nets and mending them. And now what he's got to do, chuck it in the water again, where it's not going to work. I mean, he knows it's not going to work. And then he has to clean them all up again. Do you understand? Happy? Don't think so. But he says to Jesus, nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. Now, this is the key to Christian living. Your experience might tell you no. But if Jesus says yes, your experience counts for nothing. Look at the lessons. Look at the lessons. He says here, he caught nothing. What he says, I just cleaned and mended those nets. What's Jesus saying? Do it again. That shouldn't stop you. See, we are tempted to be guided by our own experiences. Particularly when as a church we do outreach, we do things, we plan things. We say, oh, that doesn't work, we've tried that. Or that doesn't work. Maybe we should talk like that and pray some more. And so we are tempted to be guided by our own experience instead of what God says. Does that ring a bell, guys? We've all done this. We've all done this. I remember times that I got so surprised. And I remember one outreach we did. And it was, I didn't think, I thought if we get 50 to 100 people, that's it, mate. We got 600. I wish it would happen again, soon. We are tempted to be guided by our own experiences instead of what God says. He was in reality asking Simon to try again. This is significant. Where he had what? Failed in the past. Just because you failed with whatever it might be. He is asking you again to what? Try again. Can you remember that? It wouldn't matter how often you failed. If he asks you to try again, here is the counsel for today. Do try again. You must. And so, don't let that stop you. Jesus directed the freshly cleaned and mended nets to be cast in the deeper water and go over all the previous efforts of mending and cleaning it again. That's the situation. That's the situation. That's what he asked. They, you and me too, needed to learn that obedience to Jesus should not be dependent on favorable circumstances. If he tells you go, you what? You go. Can you get that? Don't be so sure in your own assessments, whatever it might be. Before you teach someone to obey Jesus, you should do so yourself first. Does that make sense? Absolutely. How are you going to tell someone to follow Jesus if you're not really following him yourself? You've got to do that. You've got to do that. Simon answered and said to him, Master, we've toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. And of course, when they done this, what happened? You know the story, don't you? I want you to try to imagine. Sometimes I read the story, then I close the Bible, and I try to visualize. I try to visualize what must have happened. That, as I said, I like fishing. I never do it. I don't have time. And sometimes I get cranky because I really like it. There is something about throwing out a line, and this is just line fishing, you know, throwing out the line, and then suddenly you have this reel, and suddenly it goes, and there is this. And you're busy for 10 minutes, and it's exciting, it's great stuff. Anybody done a bit of deep sea fishing? It's good fun, isn't it? You got a boat? Oh, no, good. Okay, I'm looking for someone with a boat. Okay.
Just did last week.
Yeah, the last week. See, it's fun, it's fun. Now imagine, this is your profession, this is your life, this is your livelihood. And we all know the disappointments. And he throws it out, and he throws it out. And by the first grip, you can tell all your Christmases have come at once. I want you to think about the number here. They caught a great number of fish and the net was breaking. So the nets are strong, but they're about breaking. So they chock-a-block with fish. There's no old mattresses in there, it's fish, all of it. And you try to pull it in. And you try that excitement as a professional fisherman. This is the highlight. This is the zenith of your profession. It couldn't be any better. Success at last. Success at last. Now, it gets even better. It was so good. They signaled their partners in the other boat, John and James, the sons of Zebedee. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both the boats so that they began to... That's a lot. How big were the boats? Well, the boats, I've seen various fishing boats there. I'm not sure how big this was. It'd be something like, would that be about 20 feet, 25 feet from the wall to here? And then you have a width of about 1/3, probably about 7 feet, 8 feet wide. Chock-a-block of fish. In fact, there's 2 boats like that. Chock-a-block with fish. That had never happened. That broke all and every record. This is success. This is marvelous. This is incredible. This they would have talked about for ages. Well, we still talk about it now. It's fascinating what happened. Why did Jesus do that? Why did he do it this way? Why didn't he let them catch at night time? Why?
He did that to open their eyes so they would be drawn to him.
Good. Any other thoughts? Yes, John.
He showed them that anything's possible with him.
See, they have Jesus in the boat. Now, if you have Jesus in the boat, you can catch anything. Very true. They realized how dependent they were, and we'll come to that. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came, filled both boats, so they began to sing. Now you'd think that this is fantastic, and this would cement their careers as fishermen. But the incredible thing happened. Something very incredible happens here. When Simon Peter saw that, he fell down at Jesus' knees, and this is what he said. Depart from me, for I am a sinful man. Oh Lord, why did he say that? What prompted that man? Have you ever been slightly even in that position, that the presence of God, that the presence of Jesus would not be befitting for you and your lifestyle? You understand what I'm saying? He had obeyed. He had done what Jesus had asked him to do. Of course, what was his expectation? More empty nets to be cleaned and mended. But now he's a fisherman. He knows everything there is to know about fishing. He knows there is no way that this could possibly be coincidence. What he is looking at is an absolute miracle. An absolute miracle. It could never have happened without divine intervention. You know, when you get those moments in your life and you know it is divine intervention, sobering, isn't it? It's a very sobering realization. I like to quote from Desire of Ages. Yet he clung to the feet of Jesus, feeling he could not be parted from him. Do you see that? He knows what he is. That's one thing. But he knows who Jesus is. He is no longer just a rabbi and a possible Messiah that he would believe in. They worked part-time. Up until this point, they had worked with him part-time. You understand? They were still sustained by the fishing. Nothing wrong with that. Paul was a tent maker. That was all right. Others used to do work to supplement their income whilst they were working for Jesus. But now a big change is coming here. He clung to the feet of Jesus, feeling that he could not be parted from him. You know, the highlights of your Christian walk is when you know you cannot be separated from God. What else is there? What else could there possibly be worthwhile and be separated from him? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The presence of divinity revealed his own unholiness. Sometimes I used to think, wouldn't it be nice if I could just see God? You know, couple of minutes. Do you remember stories from the Bible where there was what is called a theophany, where someone saw God? And do you remember what happened to them? Can you come up with any examples? Anybody? Okay, let me help you. Was Isaiah a good man? He was a prophet. He had a vision of God. What did he end up saying? You study the book of Isaiah, the opening chapter. He sees God and he feels his uncleanliness. Woe me, because I'm a man of unclean lips, living amongst a people of unclean lips. Daniel. Could you imagine anybody more compliant to the will of God than the man Daniel? Then he has a vision of Jesus in celestial splendor. He has a vision. And what does he say? He loses the power to stand up. He falls on the ground. The angel has to help him on his hand and feet. It's incredible. He felt uncomely. He felt unworthy. His power, his physical power left him. John on the island of Patmos has also a vision of Jesus after some 64 years since he saw him go up to heaven. What happened to him? And if anybody had a life compliant to the will of God, it was this man, John the Revelator. The thing is, sometimes I think we ought to be grateful that we can't see him physically. And apparently that is a fact, because you and I haven't seen true holiness yet. Are you with me? Haven't seen true holiness yet. One day we will, and we will be able to see him. And I hope that this doesn't... What was that? Okay. The presence of divinity revealed his own uncleanliness. This revelation of power had given Peter an acute sense of his sinfulness. He realized how sinful he was. He now sees Jesus in a completely different light. If there's no power in your Christian life, you may need not just yourself, but you may need to see Jesus in a different light. And so, love for the master, shame for his own disbelief, it absolutely, she writes, it absolutely overwhelmed him. What a reality check it was for this man. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish which they had taken. And so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. There were 4 of them: Simon, Andrew, John, and James. And they were good men, simple men, fishermen, also often arguing who should be the most important in the kingdom to come. Because they believed the Messiah was going to establish the society, the country of Israel to its former glory, and they would all hold government positions. You understand? And they often used to waste a lot of time discussing who should be the most important, really. They did. Can you believe it? He really saw something in them that later on turned them out to be the apostles that they became. That's marvelous that God can see that. Because when you read the story, you certainly can't. And so, Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. You see, the problem is this. When it comes to the unknown, we become afraid. He says, do not fear. That's the first thing we've got to learn. We've got to stop fearing. We got to start trusting. And Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on, you will catch men. So when they had brought their boats to land, they forsook all and followed him. And the Greek word implies a deeper personal attachment to Jesus. From this moment onwards, they followed him full time. They now became full-time disciples. Wonderful. Because by now they could see what he could do. He had assured them that they would be cared for, and they were. But it's marvelous when you look at it. They forsook all. They were at the zenith of their professional experience. And he bids them to become fishers of men. And they say yes. And that means they have to leave everything behind. That's good, isn't it? Could you do it? Hey? Could you do it? Well, they did. And that's very qualifying, because this miracle established their absolute faith and trust in him. It was after Peter had been led to self-renunciation and dependence upon divine power that he received the call to his work for Christ. You can only work for Christ if you have come to this self-renunciation. You know what that is, don't you? You can only work for Jesus if there is a self-distrust. Because the moment you think you can do it, any success, you'll take the credit. You understand? And the credit is always due to the one who really does do the fishing. True? Absolutely. You see, the deeper lesson which the miracle conveyed for the disciples is a lesson for us also. We'll work for Jesus. People often say, can I do something? What can I do? Well, lots of jobs I can think of. But what you need that commitment. And you need that willingness to do the things that are not glamorous, you understand? We all do a bit of that. Kevin, myself, we sometimes carry things, do things, drive there, do, whatever it takes. It's okay. You do it because you want to. Working for Jesus means you don't really count. You do, but you don't. You put another person, you put certainly Jesus before you. Work for Jesus really should become this. He whose word could gather the fishes from the sea could also impress human hearts and draw them by the cords of love. This is an incredible principle. The next outreach that we plan, we must bear this in mind. If he could bring the fish, he can bring the people. You can't. You can't. It's only because this principle that he can draw them by cords of love so that his servants might become fishers of men. Who is really doing the fishing? Yes, he is. And you got to learn that and you got to accept that. Yes, Pete, quick comment.
He's doing the fishing, but you are physically representing him.
Oh, very true. Very true. Oh, yes, very true. If we're not there, when we don't do anything, no fishing. You understand? But then he'll call others to the work. Our job is clear. We'll work for Jesus. I would say we'll work with Jesus. You're working together. You go fishing together. You pull them up. You pull them in. You run your programs. You do what you have to do. He will draw and bring the fish. Are you with me? It's very reassuring. So that his servants might become fishers of men. The first thing to be learned by all, that includes us, all who would become workers with God, is the lesson of self-distrust. It remains something to be exercised every day. But you can trust him. Absolutely. Then they are prepared to have imparted to them the character of Christ. That's really what is following Christ, isn't it? When he bids you to follow him, he's saying, become like me. Learn from me. He said that, didn't he? Yeah, he said that. He said, you learn from me. And so, they took up the cross of service and followed in the footsteps of Jesus. Efforts put forth in our own strength will prove fruitless. We need the cooperation of a higher power. This is something you do learn when you work for him. You need that higher power in your life. It is only when divine power is combined with human effort, this is our SDA commentary, that results can be effective and permanent. You need to work together with him. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what is the catch of the day? Well, When you go to a restaurant, they'll say the catch of the day, the fish. The catch of the day is discounted. It's a special. They call that a special. Can I give you some advice? Are you all awake? Never get the special of the day. They want to get rid of it. It is not the catch of the day. It's not even the catch of yesterday. It is the catch of last week, and they're trying to flog it. And they put sauces on it. They drown it. I've been in those restaurants, and I've had those fish, and I thought to myself, why did I fall for this again? It's a waste of money. Never trust. Describe to me in a few words, if you can, what would you describe, how would you describe the catch of the day here in the story? Huh? Just caught. Fresh. Delicious. You think of eating, don't you? I wasn't even thinking that. What would you describe the catch? Priceless? Huh? Plentiful. Is that it? Huh? Expensive? Well, there's good money involved. A miracle? Huh? The biggest catch. Now here, you're all wrong. The catch of the day, read it, is Peter, Andrew, John, and James. Are you with me? The biggest catch of the day could be you today, if this story appeals to you. True? We're the biggest catch in his eyes. We are the biggest catch. And what a mighty man they became. They did. They did. They turned the world upside down. They had launched out into the deep as ordinary fishermen. They launched out into the deep to which Christ had called them, and that was the lesson. When Jesus tells you, cast your net in the deep, you do that. Even if you think it's the wrong time, you do that. At his bidding, you do that. It works. Fishing for people, in conclusion. He who loves Christ the most will do the greatest amount of good. It's not your skills, you understand. It is how you love him that will determine your success. Because the success belongs to him anyway. Nothing is impossible with a willing heart. True? Oh, absolutely true. It was a willing heart that prompted him to do what Jesus asked him, despite his misgivings. And it was richly rewarded. Nothing is impossible with a teachable mind. You got to click this button here. See that? You got to click that learning button. Far more. It's right next to the control. You hit that button and start learning. I like that picture on the left. It reminds me, as a kid, the kids would bring an apple for the teacher. I always used to look at those apples, and I thought to myself, I should be a teacher. Never became one, as such. Nobody never gave me an apple. You don't. Nothing is impossible with willing hands. Just helping. If it's lifting, if it's carrying, carting, whatever it is. You know, I'm grateful when we offload this van. I get these people that are there to help me. Whenever somebody says to me, what can I do? Can I work for the Lord? I always feel like saying, yeah, here's a van. It needs to be offloaded. That's how you work for the Lord too. Willing hands, willing hands. He commands. Yes, he does. And then we obey, correct? And then, of course, he accomplishes the results. They're out there. They are out there, and we need to get those seats filled. We need to bring him into a knowledge of Jesus. And we are given the commission to do so. And it's deep out there, I know. And this may be the wrong time. Now, no such thing as the wrong time. We need to cast the net into the deep. And I can't wait for the harvest. I can't wait. We have a special item again. I'd like to thank these men for coming all this way and so many others.
Sound of a mighty rushing wind, and it's closer now than it's ever been. I can almost hear it as Gabriel sounds the call. At the midnight cry, we'll be going home. When Jesus steps out on the clouds to call his children, Christ shall rise to meet him in the air, and then those that remain shall be quickly changed. At the midnight cry, when Jesus comes again. I look around me, I see prophecies fulfilled, and signs of the time. They're appearing everywhere. I can almost hear the Father as he says, "Come, get your and at the midnight cry, At the midnight cry, when Jesus comes again. At the midnight cry, when Jesus comes again.